Hello, and welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we delve into a different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is January 25th. On this day in 1993, tragedy struck just outside of CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia. During the morning rush hour, a gunman opened fire on cars stopped at a red light, killing 2 CIA employees and injuring 3 others. The man behind the attack, Mir Amal Khanzi, acted out of grievances against U.S. foreign policy. What followed was an international manhunt that spanned years and brought critical changes to national security. Today, we'll take a closer look at the events of that day, the lives of those affected, the hunt for Khanzi, and the impact of this attack on America's approach to security and terrorism. Let's get started. January 25th, 1993 started just like any other Monday morning for the commuters in Langley, Virginia. CIA headquarters, situated on busy Route 123, saw its usual morning traffic. At around 8 a.m., cars idled at a red light outside the main entrance, their drivers completely unaware of the horrors that were about to unfold. Among those waiting in their vehicles were Frank Darling, a 28-year-old CIA communications specialist, and Dr. Lansing Bennett, a 66-year-old agency physician. Suddenly, a man in a light blue Chevrolet sedan parked behind them, calmly stepped out, and began firing an AK-47 assault rifle into the line of cars. The attack was swift and deliberate. Frank Darling was shot multiple times, dying instantly. Dr. Bennett was struck next and succumbed to his injuries shortly thereafter. The gunman didn't stop there, though. Instead, he turned his weapon on other vehicles and injured 3 more CIA employees: Nicholas Starr, Calvin Morgan, and Stephen Williams. The scene was pure chaos. Witnesses described rapid gunfire, shattered glass, and panicked drivers abandoning their cars to flee. But just as suddenly as the attack began, the shooter returned to his car and drove away as calmly as he had arrived, leaving behind shattered lives and a shaken community. Mir Amal Khanzi was born in 1964 in Quetta, Pakistan, a city near the Afghan border. He came from a well-off Pashtun family who was involved in trucking and trade. Growing up in a politically charged region, Khanzi was shaped both by the cultural traditions and the unrest of his community. Seeking better opportunities, Khanzi came to the United States in 1991 on a business visa. He settled in Reston, Virginia, taking on various odd jobs, including work as a courier. Those who knew him described him as quiet and reserved, but beneath this exterior, he harbored a deep resentment toward U.S. foreign policy. Khanzi was particularly enraged by America's involvement in the Middle East, including its support for Israel and actions during the Gulf War. He saw the CIA as a symbol of this perceived injustice. Later, during interviews after his capture, Khanzi showed no remorse, saying that he had wanted to make a statement through his actions. Law enforcement agencies, including the FBI and local police, arrived at the crime scene within minutes. Witnesses provided descriptions of the shooter and his vehicle, a light blue Chevrolet sedan. Investigators quickly identified it and located the now abandoned car at a Reston hotel later that day. Inside the vehicle, they found shell casings, a weapon, and documents that all linked the car to Mir Amal Khanzi. However, by the time authorities pieced everything together, Khanzi was already gone. On January 27th, just 2 days after the attack, he boarded a flight to Pakistan using his real name slipping through the cracks of U.S. law enforcement systems. The fact that he was able to leave the country after such a huge investigation had already begun exposed significant gaps in interagency coordination. The FBI launched a massive international manhunt. Khanzi used his tribal connections in the remote and lawless regions of Balochistan to evade capture. Despite these challenges, the FBI remained relentless, building an international coalition and offering a $2 million reward for information leading to his capture. As we reflect on this tragedy, it's essential to honor the lives that were lost and forever altered. Frank Darling, who was just 28 years old, was a dedicated CIA communications specialist who had his whole life ahead of him. His death devastated his colleagues and his family, who described him as hardworking and full of potential. Dr. Lansing Bennett, 66, had spent decades caring for CIA employees and their families as a physician. Known for his compassion, he left behind a legacy of service and kindness. The survivors, Nicholas Starr, Calvin Morgan, and Stephen Williams, faced long and painful recoveries, not just physically, but emotionally as well. The scars left by that day would remain with them for the rest of their lives. Tracking Khanzi across borders proved to be one of the most challenging manhunts in FBI history. Without an extradition treaty between the U.S. and Pakistan, the FBI had to rely on diplomatic efforts and local informants to locate him. For years, Khanzi moved between remote villages shielded by his tribal affiliations. Finally, in 1997, a break came when an informant tipped off authorities about his location in Dera Ghazi Khan, Pakistan. A covert operation involving both U.S. and Pakistani forces led to his capture on June 15, 1997. Just days later, Khanzi was extradited to the U.S., bringing to an end one of the most extensive manhunts in FBI history. Khanzi's trial began in November 1997 in Fairfax County, Virginia. The prosecution presented an overwhelming case including eyewitness testimony, forensic evidence, and Khanzi's own admission of guilt. The defense argued that Khanzi was influenced by mental health issues and political grievances, but the jury rejected these claims. On November 10, 1997, Khanzi was convicted of 2 counts of capital murder and 3 counts of malicious wounding. He was sentenced to death, with the judge citing the premeditated and calculated nature of the attack as justification for this sentence. Khanzi remained on death row for nearly 5 years, during which he expressed no remorse. Khanzi was executed by lethal injection on November 14, 2002. For the victims of the families and the survivors, it marked the end of a long journey toward justice, though the loss they endured could never truly be undone. The attack on CIA headquarters had far-reaching implications for national security. It exposed vulnerabilities at high-profile locations and prompted a reevaluation of security protocols. Federal agencies implemented stricter perimeter defenses, improved intelligence sharing, and heightened awareness of both domestic and international threats. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If you found today's story compelling, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And be sure to join me again tomorrow as we explore another significant event in true crime history. Stay safe, and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day, True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!